I've seen, even in our environment, some of these advanced cyber attacks bypassing the traditional cyber security capabilities that we have. As a result, we have invested in AI and machine learning capabilities.
Yeah.
We block more than billion. Yeah, more than
cyber attacks.
Yes, cyber events. That could have been a cyber attack if we didn't block. Yes, yeah. So we definitely need more women in the cybersecurity space. We know that we don't have adequate women, whereas diversity is very crucial. I mean, AI and machine learning has also showed the importance of having women in the cybersecurity space.
Hello and welcome to this latest episode of ITWeb TV. My name is Simnikwe Mzekandaba. I'm joined in studio by Sithembile Songo, who is the Chief Information Security Officer at the power utility Eskom. Sithembile has a wealth of experience in cybersecurity, having held various roles in public and private sector in industries such as telecoms, financial, as well as the public sector. Welcome, Sithembile, and we look forward to hearing what you have to share with us about the evolution of the threat landscape.
Thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure for me to be here today.
Similarly, like I said, you are the CISO, Chief Information Security Officer at Eskom. So I just want to hear from you in terms of what is it like being a CISO at Eskom, and if you can just share with us, like, what does your typical day look like?
Okay, all right. It's a very interesting question. Okay, so days are never the same, but usually it's a mix of strategic planning, oversight in terms of operational tasks, because I'm managing a team as well. So Eskom is different. It's got OT environment, unlike other organizations that just solely rely on IT. So OT is completely different because in the IT space, we regard security as a priority. OT, yes, as much as security is a priority, but availability and safety are the main priority. In other words, whatever that you deploy in that environment, you must make sure that safety and availability are the main priority before you consider anything else. So that's because OT was not designed with security in mind. And again, that environment needs to be up and running 24/7. So whatever that you do, or even if it means that there are certain updates that you need to make or do in that environment, you must follow proper protocol or standards. Otherwise, you'll affect the operational environment. Yeah, that needs to be up and running 24/7. So yeah, Eskom is quite interesting, I must say, because we've got a number of power stations. Our infrastructure is very complex, quite a number of systems. User base is more than 40,000. Yeah, so it's quite an interesting environment, especially if you don't like to be bored. So you never get bored because there's always something new that you need to address. There are always challenges that present opportunities for you to be innovative and so forth. So yeah, it is quite a very good environment for someone who's in the cybersecurity field, because I believe cybersecurity professionals do not like to be bored. They enjoy a dynamic environment that has got different types of challenges that they can address almost on a daily basis. Yeah, so yes, that's more or less like it. But again, like I said, it consists of both a mix of strategic and operational tasks. And managing a team, responding to various stakeholders, both internal and external. Obviously, once in a while, like on a quarterly basis, also report to the board, because the executives do treat information security as a very, very important aspect. Yeah, and that is driven right from the top, which is good.
Mm.
Yeah,
you mentioned, like how Eskom is a complex. It's complex, and I can imagine how that might be for you as someone who's in IT. Mm-hmm. I suppose it's complex across the board, right? For any person who's a C-level executive. For you in security, does, like, on a personal note, how does that affect you? Are you like like scared, or do you like take it in your stride? Are you like, no, this is my job, I need to do it?
That's what interests me, actually. That's what keeps me going, because it keeps me on my toes. Mm-hmm. Like I said, you never get bored. There's always a new opportunity, because each and every challenge presents an opportunity to resolve, that particular challenge. So yeah, that's what keeps it exciting, because there are different types of environment. Like each and every power station is unique.
Yeah.
So, for instance, if you need to assess the threats and so forth, you need to understand how does that power station work, like the legacy systems that are that needs to be taken into consideration when you deploy new technologies, and the fact that you've got different divisions as well. So all these environments are different. Remember, the grid is totally dependent on OT. And this same technology, OT stands for operational technology. And this operational technology was not designed with security in mind. But that's what the grid depends on in order to produce electricity. Yeah.
And just what are some of the cyber threats that you are noticing that are, coming up, that are becoming very prevalent and trying to, attack your systems? Is it a matter of if you can just talk us through that. Yeah.
Okay. So ransomware attacks have been very prevalent, especially when it comes to OT systems. Why? Because these cyber criminals do realize that these systems were not designed with cybersecurity in mind. So obviously there are lots of legacy systems that might not accommodate modern systems or modern capabilities from a cybersecurity point of view. So I've seen it actually in 2023, ransomware attacks were very prevalent. I've seen a number of OT-related industries becoming a target in terms of ransomware attacks. And it goes back to what I said, that the systems are not designed with security in mind. So cyber criminals do take chances. That is why we need to apply those layers of defense in terms of making sure that we protect those legacy systems. There are different ways that include encapsulation as well, so that we can also cater for those systems that are not designed with security in mind. But there's a lot. I think we'll talk about it as we go through the interviews in terms of segmentation as well, because that's what can also help you survive, so that if one environment is affected, it doesn't necessarily affect your entire environment. But again, gain visibility, know where your assets are so that you can protect them accordingly. But it's not just about knowing your assets, it's about knowing what threats can be posed to your assets. What vulnerabilities can expose your assets, and make sure that you proactively mitigate those vulnerabilities before the cyber criminals exploit them. Yeah, so it's a continuous journey, but it's an exciting one, I must say. But it's also about making sure that when you implement or deploy security capabilities, you do not just deploy them for the sake of deploying them. You understand the use cases that you require. You understand what is it exactly that will enable your business at the end of the day. Because as cyber professionals, we are there to enable the business. We don't exist for the sake of existing. If you apply too much cybersecurity capabilities in such a way that business cannot operate, then we are useless. We need to make sure that whatever capabilities that we apply enable business at the end of the day. Yeah.
And you mentioned, if OT was not designed with security in mind at the start, has it been easy to how has that transition been then, when now security is top of mind for your OT?
Of course, yeah, of course. Actually, we do design security with we do design OT systems with cybersecurity in mind. Yes, going forward. Yeah. We don't want to repeat the mistakes that were done a long time ago. Obviously, at that time, probably cybersecurity attacks were not, or cyber-related attacks were not as prevalent. But now everyone can see that, okay, criminals have evolved. They prefer cyber attacks over the normal types of crime because the chances of them getting shot are very slim. They're sitting behind a laptop somewhere or behind a PC somewhere and launching those attacks. Whereas when you go and rob the bank, the chances of them getting shot are huge. And the technology has advanced so much in such a way that it enables those cyber criminals to launch those attacks. There are ransomware attacks as well. Ransomware as a service capabilities out there, whereby these cyber criminals can actually buy the software. Yes. So at this day and age, you don't even have to be an expert. You can just buy the software that you need so that you can target that specific organization. And that is why we have so much attacks or cyber attacks, because now the service is available. We've got malware as a service, fraud as a service because of Gen AI. There are a whole lot of cybersecurity related threats, and it's easy even for the people who are not technically inclined to get access to those avenues so that they can launch those cyber attacks.
Sure. And if estimates, what are we looking at? I don't know if you can give me like a round figure about like the attacks, the amount of attacks that you would, let's say maybe in the last financial year, that Eskom might have encountered, and
yeah, it's quite a lot. It's in billions, but maybe I can give you an estimate on a monthly basis.
Okay.
We block more than billion. Yeah, more than
cyber attacks.
Yes, cyber events.
Cyber events
that could have been a cyber attack if we didn't block. Yes, yeah. So yeah, for instance, earlier on I spoke about ransomware attacks. Yeah, we do have, for instance, it ranges at more than 100,000 per month attempted cyber attacks that we block on a monthly basis. And then in terms of DDoS attacks, it's more than 1 billion at some point. Actually, it's yeah, at some point when we had load shedding, we were able to block more than 1 billion. Sometimes it will go to close to 2 billion per month. Yeah, so those were attempted attacks that we were blocking from a cybersecurity point of view. And then not only that, third-party related breaches are quite prevalent nowadays. Why? Because these cyber criminals realize that we invest a lot in terms of implementing the cybersecurity capabilities to block those malicious actors from penetrating our network. So they now leverage on third parties so that they can gain that unauthorized access to your network. We've been seeing what's been happening out there in terms of third-party related breaches. Yeah, so that is why it's important to make sure that even your strategy adequately covers your third parties so that they don't necessarily introduce risks to your network.
I was going to say that must be a difficult one because you guys would probably work with third parties a lot.
Especially in the OT space.
Yeah.
Yeah, we work with OEMs, and at times there is too much dependency on the OEMs because they're the ones who designed that particular systems or those systems. And sometimes you find that in order for you to implement certain capabilities, you need to negotiate with those OEMs because they tell you that then your warranties will be void if you just deploy anything anyhow. Yeah, so that we do have a lot of OEMs, but we have to manage their interconnection to our environment so that they don't introduce risks to our network. We understand the impact that a cyber breach can have, especially to Eskom, because we host national critical infrastructure. So any cyber breach will have a detrimental effect, not just to Eskom, but to the economy at large. Yeah.
So would we, in hypothetical speaking, hypothetically speaking, if there was an attack on the grid, would it be like a total blackout of everything?
Yeah, absolutely. You've seen what happened in the Ukraine, right?
Oh,
yeah, there was a total blackout which affected a number of citizens, and that's not what we want. Actually, I think we had a glimpse during load shedding. We could see the impact to the economy, to the country. So if there's a cyber breach, it could be even worse than that. Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's scary times.
Yeah. That is why we need to make sure that we apply the necessary measures to avoid that from happening. But again, there's always a saying that it's not about if, it's about when. So we also arm ourselves in such a way that we have the necessary capabilities to be as resilient as possible so that if something happens, at least we are able to respond. And we've been leveraging a lot on AI and machine learning in terms of real-time response and detection because we do realize that these cyber attacks are quite advanced nowadays. Some of them actually cannot even be blocked by these traditional capabilities that we have. I've seen, even in our environment, some of these advanced cyber attacks bypassing the traditional cyber security capabilities that we have. As a result, we have invested in AI and machine learning capabilities. I remember when I joined Eskom, first weekend I had to work because we had to investigate some allegations that were made that Eskom has been breached and so forth. So during the investigation, I realized that, okay, we've got various sources of information. And when it comes to response, time is of essence. The sooner you respond, the better. There's something called cyber kill chain. So the cyber kill chain is all about making sure that you respond during the early phases of the cyber kill chain. And how can you do that if you have various sources and if you don't have adequate visibility? You won't be able to do that. By the time you respond, it would be too late. Actually, if you look at the companies that were breached previously, in most instances, it's because they did not have adequate visibility. That's number one. And number two, they probably have various sources that they have to refer to verify whether it's an incident or not. And by the time they respond, it's too late. So I then realized that, okay, we can't work like this. Time is of essence when you respond to an incident. Let's make sure that we have adequate visibility in terms of all our assets. And not only that, let's make sure that if something happens, if something penetrates our network, at least we have that visibility that can notify us as early as possible so that we can respond timeously. There's this analogy that I always like to refer to, that if someone gets bitten by a snake, so you need to know what snake bit you as quick as possible before the poison travels to your critical organs of your body, because if the poison gets there, it's too late. And you may even die or lose your life. So same thing applies in your infrastructure. If something happens, if there's any malicious activity that is happening, you need to know as quick as possible before it actually gets to your critical systems, because by the time it gets there, it's too late, then it becomes a major cyber breach. That could have been stopped if you had proper visibility and so forth. So earlier on, I was talking about this AI. So this AI and machine learning solution is not just a nice to have. You must have a proper use case. For instance, in my case, it had to do with getting proper visibility and making sure that at least we know what is connecting to our network.
Yeah.
And we also know if there's an anomaly or if there's a malicious activity, so that we can block it as quick as possible. Another use case had to do with the resources, because I did not have adequate resources. And at that time, there are certain standard processes that we had to follow to get more resources. But then, remember, cyber criminals were not waiting for us to put all that in place.
The time to find your resources and
Yes.
we'll try to attack.
So that is why I then had to think out of the box and say, okay,
Yeah.
the automation that we can leverage from out of this AI and machine learning capabilities will help us. And it did help because it augmented the headcount that I have. For instance, the SOC analysts are no longer focusing too much on the manual tasks that they used to do before. It is now automated, and then they're able to focus or to put their focus or efforts on other tasks that are more strategic or that can actually help the organization even achieve their objectives better. Yeah.
Okay. So if we were to look at it, you've got AI, let's say your team consists of AI, but SOC analysts, who else makes up, the cybersecurity hub or team that looks after all of Eskom?
So I've got network security specialists, because I'm also responsible for network security, identity and access management team that makes it a point that everyone who accesses the network is authorized to do so. I've got OT specialists that assist me in terms of managing that relationship between IT and OT, because remember, these are two separate environments, so the relationship must be managed properly. Convergence is there to stay, and it actually helps in terms of achieving that operational efficiency. So we cannot work in silos. We have to make sure that that continuous relationship is maintained, and we also assist them in terms of attaining that optimized operational effectiveness in their OT environment. So there's that. I decided to make sure that I recruit a resource that can assist me in that regard. And then, yes, we are doing that in terms of making sure that we improve the overall cybersecurity posture, not just at the IT level, but at the OT level. But not only that, I also have the team that looks after policies, standards and procedures. Because remember, when it comes to security, it's not just about technology, it's about policies, processes and technology. So I've got a team that also has to develop the necessary policies, standards and procedures. And not only that, revise them accordingly, because the cyber threat landscape evolves. So as it evolves, we need to make sure that even our policies, our standards are aligned to that evolving cyber threat or technology requirements. And not only that, I do have a team that also look after the operations in terms of security. So when you develop an application, you need to make sure that security is embedded throughout the life cycle, right? it shouldn't be treated as an afterthought. So there's a team that assists me in that regard. It's not, at this stage, I don't have adequate resources there, but at least we are doing something just to make sure that security is not treated as an afterthought. And then not only that, we work closely with different business stakeholders, just to make sure that security is seen as an enabler, right, at the end of the day. Yeah. I mentioned earlier on that it's important for business to see us as an enabler. Otherwise, they'll end up bypassing security-related processes, or they may not realize the importance of integrating security throughout their life cycle. Yeah. And then also, when it comes to security, after deploying all your controls, you must test the effectiveness of your control. So I also have a team that makes the point that we conduct vulnerability assessments, penetration tests, so that we can proactively test our network, our controls before someone takes advantage of that. Yeah, so I basically look after security end to end. Yeah.
And just to also follow up on what you were saying about, the evolution of cyber threats, and we're seeing more of that, particularly here in South Africa as well. We'll see lots of reports about data breaches. What would you say are some of the, security challenges that you foresee for South African organizations, given, what we're experiencing at the moment or what we're witnessing at the moment?
Given what we're experiencing at the moment, we need to make sure that we improve our cybersecurity capabilities when it comes to managing third parties. I mean, we've seen what happened to Microsoft, we've seen what happened to CrowdStrike. So that goes without saying that we really need to improve our capabilities when it comes to looking after our third parties. I mentioned earlier on that these cyber criminals are also clever. They check what's happening. Even with regards to what happened to CrowdStrike, they realized that, by hacking just one organization, I can actually get so much return on investment by leveraging on just one supplier that will help me to gain access to so many companies. So that is why it's important to make sure that we have proper processes in place to manage our third parties, not just processes, also the technology that can help you in terms of in case your processes fail you. Yeah. So if you look at what happened in terms of the recent incident regarding CrowdStrike, I read somewhere that the damage or the impact is actually more than $10 billion across the world. So that's a lot of money, actually. And we've seen even airports, failing to provide the boarding pass to people. I saw manual boarding passes. That's their PCP, by the way, which is good. But it caused delays, unnecessary delays, and those companies lost a lot of money. And that was completely unforeseen. I don't think anyone has ever expected this. It's one of the biggest outages in the IT incident history. And it caused a very huge impact. So we need to be very, very much vigilant in terms of who do we bring to our network and how do we make sure that they don't introduce risks, whether from an operational point of view or cyber security point of view. Because we've been focusing too much on cybersecurity, but the recent incident shows that even if someone decides to distribute an update that has got an error, it can actually affect not just a few companies, the entire world. Because if you look at the scope of this impact, it did not just affect a certain country; it affected the entire world. Which is quite concerning, even from a cyber insurance point of view. In the past, when you apply for a cyber insurance, they'll just ask you what capabilities do you have. And if you mention, for instance, that I've got this capability that helps me in terms of mitigating a cyber risk, they'll tick. But going forward, I think they'll go a step further and say, okay, how do you make sure that this particular capability that you are obtaining through a managed service will not cause an impact or unnecessary business impact to your organization. Yeah.
Sure. A lot to consider.
Yeah.
And you mentioned like being vigilant, that is, I suppose, a key area. But then from you, what are some of the things that keep you up at night? Like you, so from a cybersecurity perspective, what is it that you worry about if you, you know?
Yeah. Okay. All right.
For your organization, you know, like, yeah.
Okay, what used to keep me up at night was that visibility aspect.
Yeah.
Because remember, when it comes to cybersecurity, it's a continuous journey. You can never say you've achieved 100% compliance or 100% cybersecurity requirements. No, you take a risk-based approach. So what used to keep me up at night was that level of visibility. I mentioned the complexity, the number of power stations that we have, the huge infrastructure, network and systems that we have, both IT and OT. So visibility is very important, because as much as we are still busy with improving the overall cybersecurity posture, we had to make sure that we get that level of visibility so that if something happens, we are able to react as quick as possible. So when I addressed that aspect, at least I was able to sleep at night. To a certain degree, because what's the most important thing is to take a risk-based approach, right? I know in the past we used to rely too much on compliance, but guess what? You can be 100% compliant and still get breached the next day. So take a risk-based approach. Check what is it that is critical to your environment, and that's exactly what I did. I said, okay, look, if I look at all the gaps that we need to address, and the time that it will take, and the steps that we need to follow in terms of procurement and so forth, let us at least prioritize this particular aspect, visibility, and then we can continue with the rest. So yeah, that's what used to keep me up at night, but at least I managed to address it. But it doesn't end there. There's always something that keeps a CISO awake at night. So now we need to then look at the next phase. I've addressed the first phase, which was making sure that we don't become blind in terms of potential cybersecurity breaches. We've got that visibility. We are able to also respond if it happens. But now we need to go to the next phase and check what's happening internally, including the insider threat management program. Yeah,
seems like it's a lot. Sithembile, you know, when this episode airs, where we actually are in August, and it's Women's Month in South Africa in August. We know that. So I want to hear from you in terms of, you know, like, and you don't often find women CISOs or CISOs that are women. So what drew you to this career? Just if you could just share, to share that with us.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm very much passionate about cybersecurity, but like you said, what drew me to this career? Remember, in the early ages, like in the early years, we never heard of even information security. Even when I was at school, no one told me about information security, but I was in the IT field, right? So my first internship was in information security. Actually, there were various domains. So they looked at what we were doing. So when they looked at my profile, they found it suitable for information security, and that's where I was placed. Even though at the back of my mind, I actually wanted to be a developer because that's what I knew at that time, and that's what was interesting me, based on the qualification that I got.
And you were thinking, why security? Yeah. Why cybersecurity?
I remember I even told
information security.
I even told the facilitators that, look, if something happens, if, for instance, you still get a space in that other domain, please let me know, because I still want to move. But little did I know that, okay, this is where I actually fit, and this is where my passion is. Because after that internship, I never wanted to look back. I discovered, I realized that this is what I love, and this is what I'd like to pursue in my career, and that hasn't changed. I've been in this field for the past 20 years, and I'm still very much passionate about it. I even got offers before for other senior positions, but they do not necessarily focus too much on cybersecurity. At least there should be an aspect of cybersecurity, then I can accept it. So I couldn't accept them because my passion is not there. Because at the end of the day, when you do something, you must be passionate about it so that you can wake up even when there are challenges. Why? Because that passion drives you. So that's how I ended up in the cybersecurity field. Yeah.
You mentioned, like when you started that you didn't think cybersecurity was going to be for you, and you just wanted to be a developer.
Yeah.
So I suppose other women maybe think the same. So how would you say how can you get more young women in cybersecurity? Because it's quite a specialized field, and we can't ignore the fact that there's lack of talent in that space. So how do we get more young women to be interested in it or to pursue it?
All right, that's a very important question, because we definitely need more women in the cybersecurity space. We know that we don't have adequate women, whereas diversity is very crucial. I mean, AI and machine learning has also showed the importance of having women in the cybersecurity space, because there are certain technologies that have been developed using AI, but they are more accommodative towards men compared to women. So that diversity is crucial, so that even when these technologies are designed, they are also designed with women in mind, and they can accommodate their user needs. So we need to create the relevant platforms, and I know we already have. And since we've created those platforms, there's a significant improvement. For instance, we've got women in cybersecurity platform, we've got women in tech. We need to continue establishing such platforms and make sure that we encourage these young women to be part of those channels. I know nowadays that there are even WhatsApp groups where you can also pose any questions that you want, whether it's a challenge that you're having at work as a woman, and you probably want to find out how other women have navigated that challenge in the past. So those platforms are quite useful. And also mentoring is very, very important. I'm a mentor as well. I'm mentoring some women in the field, especially those who aspire to be a CISO one day. So I am mentoring them. I'm actually authentic to them, because I share what I had to go through and how I navigated around that. And also maybe give them tips on how they can overcome certain challenges without necessarily having go through the process. The fact that I went through the process doesn't mean that they have to go through the process. So if I can help them in terms of lessons learned and how can they navigate through those lessons learned, it's quite helpful. But also we need to introduce such careers during the early phases of the, for instance, academic fields. I remember when I was in tertiary, I didn't know anything about information security until I was done with my tertiary education and I had to do my internship. That's the only time I was introduced to information security, and that's too late. We need to start introducing it during the early phases of the education programs. And connection as well. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm very much open as well in terms of mentorship. Those who connect with me and who want to be mentored, I'm open, and I believe other women should also do the same. Even men can do the same, because remember, like I said, in this field, traditionally, it used to be male-dominant, meaning that for us to be here, there are some men who had to support us. Big ups to those men. We really applaud for you. Keep up doing the good work. So anyone who has a capability to mentor these young women who are still coming in terms of their careers, we do recognize the importance of the role that you're playing in these women's life. And we actually appeal to everyone who can to make sure that I've noticed nowadays many people are actually coming forward, because I'm part of the Women in Cybersecurity group as well. So there are a lot of women who are willingly mentoring these young women who want to be CISOs one day. But it's not just about being a CISO. Even if you want to be in the cybersecurity field, yes, mentoring is definitely there. And it's also about communicating and telling them that cybersecurity is broad. It's got even fields that are not necessarily technical. So you shouldn't limit yourself. Just because you're not technically inclined, it doesn't mean that you cannot be in the cybersecurity field. There are a number of domains that you can choose from that doesn't necessarily require that level of technical capabilities. And also, what I want to mention, which is quite important as well, we as women need to support one another. We need to lift as we rise. Even now, my boss is a female, and she's very supportive, which is quite good, because it means that we do realize the importance of supporting one another as women. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Sithembile, and for sharing your insightful thoughts with us.
Thank you for having me.
That was Sithembile Songo. She is the Chief Information Security Officer at the Power Utility Eskom. For more on these videos, click here.